Most people think voice lessons begin with the voice. I once approached them in that way too. A sound enters the room, the teacher listens for the problem, and the technical answer follows. Yet, many people already know that their voice behaves differently in different parts of life. It may feel free alone, but guarded in front of others. It may carry easily in conversation, then tighten around a song or sentence that feels exposed. This episode begins with that familiar experience, not with the claim that anyone has been teaching incorrectly. Before the close, there will be one simple way to notice it directly. The answer is not only how sound is produced, it is what becomes audible when we begin with the person producing it. Early voice teaching often has a clear and sensible structure. A singer brings pitch difficulty, shallow breathing, fatigue or strain, limited range. The teacher observes coordination, identifies a likely cause, gives an exercise, listens again, then repeats the process until the sound changes. Technique has a proper place here. It gives us language for the voice and for the learned patterns that help the voice work with less effort. Still, some experiences refuse to fit neatly inside that sequence. A singer may understand the exercise, carry it out correctly, yet continue to hold tension that doesn't release. Another may sing with ease in a private room, but in a public stage, his voice shortens, his jaw fixes, and his voice no longer responds in the same way. The notes haven't changed. The vocal anatomy hasn't changed, but the condition surrounding the person has. The students kept teaching me something my methods couldn't explain. At first, the natural response is to search for a better exercise. Sometimes that is exactly what helps. But after enough encounters, another possibility becomes difficult to ignore. The voice may be communicating something while the teacher is listening only for technique. Consider the singer whose breath seems continually held. The pattern may appear as upper chest breathing, a delayed release of air, or a phrase that never quite settles. Technical work can support a freer exhale, but that same control may also appear in daily life, in the way the person manages uncertainty or avoids giving too much away. The voice is not failing, it is maintaining its familiar form of protection. The shift doesn't arrive through a new drill. It arrives through a different relationship to what is being expressed. There are also some voices described as too small, and sometimes the issue involves projection, breath management, or resonance, and those matters rightly deserve technical attention. At other times, the phrase has attached itself to some longer history of restraint, of learning not to interrupt, to take up space, not to risk being heard too clearly. A person may carry that learned restraint into the throat without consciously choosing it. The body communicates in many ways. It can communicate through a shortened breath, fatigue that appears after emotional effort, a posture that braces against the room, a guarded resonance, or a voice that disappears the moment it is needed. These signs aren't defects to overpower. They are patterns to notice with care. The voice is never just a voice. This doesn't mean that every vocal difficulty contains a hidden personal story, nor does it remove the need for disciplined technical work. It means that sound production takes place in a human being, and a human being brings more into the room than a larynx, a set of exercises, and a desired note. Once that becomes visible, attention naturally widens beyond the sound itself. Attention begins with the body because the body produces the sound. Breath changes the pressure beneath the vocal folds. The jaw, tongue, ribs, spine, and neck all influence how freely a person can shape and carry a phrase. In Asian body disciplines, the dantian or hara in Japanese practice names the lower abdominal center from which steadiness, breath, and gutted movement are often understood to emerge. While a martial artist may organize force for a strike through this center, a singer may find that a settled lower body permits breath and sound to travel without unnecessary effort. Jinshinjutsu gives another language for observing bodily patterns. It approaches the person through gentle contact, breath, and attention to what might feel held or unsettled. Within Vocalogy, it functions as one of the ways of noticing conditions that may accompany vocal work. Its place is quiet. It can help a person pause long enough to sense what the body is already doing. Then there is the nervous system, which constantly reads the surrounding environment. A stage, an audition room, a difficult conversation, or even the expectation of being judged can alter breath, muscular tone, attention, and vocal response before a person has consciously decided what to do. Before expression can open, the nervous system asks a quieter question. Is it safe? The answer may be shaped by the present moment, but it may also draw upon remembered experiences of embarrassment, criticism, exclusion, or pressure. Identity enters the voice through adaptations that were often formed for understandable reasons. A person may have learned to become agreeable in order to belong, highly controlled in order to gain approval, or inconspicuous in order to avoid conflict. These responses can become familiar, that they no longer feel like responses at all. They feel like personality, yet the throat, breath, and face may still carry the cost of maintaining them. Relationship gives these patterns context. Voice training can discuss placement, registration, and resonance, but the voice also speaks towards someone. It seeks to be heard, received, understood, and perhaps protected from misunderstanding. A person doesn't communicate into an empty room. Expectations, authority, and the possibility of rejection loom large. Meaning widens the inquiry further. Yin and Yang in traditional Chinese philosophy describe complementary movements rather than fixed opposites. Inward and outward, rest and activity, yielding and asserting. The 5 elements offer another traditional map of change, using wood, fire, earth, metal, and water to consider patterns of growth, warmth, stability, release, and storage. These ideas aren't anatomical explanations for the voice. They are languages of correspondence, inviting us to notice how inner conditions and outward expression may move together, much like seasons change, not through error, but through relation. Across these layers, the voice becomes an outward expression rather than an insulated instrument. The sound may be technically coordinated, emotionally guarded, socially cautious, physically tired, or deeply connected to what is being communicated. More often, it often contains several of these conditions at once. This complexity asks for patience. A singer can understand exactly where the jaw is tight and still tighten it again when pressure rises. Recognition creates a small space between the familiar pattern and the next response. Within that space, another possibility can begin to appear. Every discipline taught me something about the voice, but none of them explained the entire person. I stopped asking which was right, and I started asking which helped me notice. Neuroscience may describe threat and regulation. Vocal pedagogy may describe coordination. Psychology, adaptation. Traditional Chinese thought, correspondence, balance, and change. And each provides a language towards a shared reality. This is not an attempt to assemble competing methods into one larger method. It is a way of seeing, where each discipline can contribute without claiming to contain the entire person. The question gradually changes from which tool will fix this sound to what does this moment allow us to notice. When we understand what is happening with the person, we understand more of what is happening with the voice. That does not reduce vocal work to biography, nor does it turn every sound into a psychological message. It simply restores proportion. The voice requires technical coordination, but coordination occurs within a person who is responding in a particular moment. Technique remains necessary because it answers how sound is formed, sustained, adjusted, and carried. A singer still needs to learn the practical conditions of singing. Sometimes a technical problem is simply a technical problem, but sometimes it points towards something larger. Learning how to tell the difference is part of the work. Recognition comes before correction because it changes the quality of attention. Tension may carry an old habit of bracing. A shallow breath may appear when a person feels watched. Pitch may become less stable when the stakes feel high and the mind begins to monitor every sound. None of these observations ask us to make assumptions about another person. They ask us to stay curious about the conditions in which the voice changes. Understanding follows recognition. Once the pattern becomes clearer, the person or teacher can consider an appropriate response. It may involve a technical adjustment, but it may also involve seeking medical or therapeutic support when needed, or finding a more honest way to speak. Choice doesn't mean that every difficulty disappears. It means that the person no longer has to meet the difficulty with only one familiar reaction. Here is where the voice lesson becomes more than a place where sound is corrected. It becomes a place where a person can observe how they organize effort, attention, and expression. A teacher does not impose on interpretation. The work remains collaborative, grounded in what can be heard, felt, and tested in the room. Most people begin with the voice, but I begin with the person. That orientation matters beyond singing because the human voice does not appear only on rehearsal rooms or in stages. It appears when someone apologizes and the breath catches before the words arrive. It appears when the person asks for help, speaks in a meeting, comforts a friend, sets a boundary, or tells a child, "I love you." In each case, the voice carries more than language. It carries the body's preparation for contact. Performance in this wider sense is a human act. It appears whenever a person enters relationship and becomes audible to another person. Singing gives us a concentrated way to study that act because music asks for breath, sound, meaning, and presence at the same time. Yet the questions reach into ordinary life. Who is speaking? What has been habitual? Who are they protecting? The next step doesn't require an explanation. It requires a moment of noticing. Speak this quietly, either aloud or in the mind. Something I genuinely love is. Choose a person, a place, a piece of music, or a memory. Then notice the breath, the face, the chest, the pace of the words, and the sound itself. There is nothing to correct. Simply observe what the body does. Now try a different sentence. Something I feel I should say is. Again, notice without judgment. Does the breath move differently? Does the face become more fixed? Does the sound change, or does more effort enter the words? The sentences are different, but so is the relationship to them. The voice responds to that relationship. Learning how to sing and speak can become a way of understanding how a person shows up, not only in song, but wherever expression meets another human being. In the next episode, performance, nervous system patterns, and the human voice come into closer examination. Most people begin with the voice. Perhaps that's why I begin with the person.